It's the first of the month, or maybe the 15th, payday. You wake up before the alarm even goes off because your brain is already running the math. You grab your phone from the nightstand. The screen brightness burns your eyes in the dark bedroom. You open your banking app. The fingerprint scanner takes a second. And there it is, the deposit, the exact number you traded 2 weeks of your finite human existence for. But before you can even feel a rush of relief, you start mentally subtracting. Rent, car payment, the credit card bill that never seems to actually go down. Groceries, the subscriptions you forgot to cancel. You watch that freshly deposited number evaporate in your mind before you've even had your morning coffee. You don't scream. You don't throw the phone across the room. You just let out this quiet, heavy sigh. You put the phone face down on the mattress. You stare at the ceiling. Because in that exact moment, your body knows the truth your mind desperately refuses to accept. You aren't building a life. You are funding your own captivity. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It feels like security, but it's just a well-decorated cage. And you hold the key, but you're too terrified to use it. Pause for a second. Think about your commute. You are sitting in traffic. The same route, the same brake lights, the same podcasts playing to numb the reality of where you are going. You look around at the people in the cars next to you. They all have that same blank, dead-eyed stare. You get to work. Your boss sends an email. It's urgent, they say. It's always urgent in their world. You drop whatever fragment of peace you had left to handle their artificial emergency. You type out a perfectly polite response. On it. Right away. Happy to help. You hit send. And as the email swooshes away, you feel this dull, suffocating ache in your chest. But you don't quit. You don't stand up and walk out. You shrink a little bit more into your ergonomic chair. You take a sip of lukewarm coffee. You open the spreadsheet. You convince yourself that you are being responsible. You tell yourself that everyone does this. This is just how life works. Wrong. The uncomfortable truth is that you are exchanging your non-renewable time for a highly renewable currency at a steep discount just to feel a fleeting sense of certainty. You are trading your empire for a guaranteed bi-weekly crumb. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It quietly murders your ambition while disguised as adult responsibility. It tells you you're doing the right thing, right up until the moment you realize you've wasted your best years building someone else's dream. Let's look at your evenings. You come home exhausted, not physically exhausted. You haven't been chopping wood. You are mentally drained from playing a character all day, the good employee, the reliable one. You unlock your front door and drop your keys on the counter. You sit on the couch. You open a food delivery app because you don't even have the energy to cook the groceries sitting in your fridge. You spend $30 you shouldn't spend on a meal you don't even really want. Then you open streaming services. You scroll, you scroll. You pick a show you've already seen 3 times. You sit there, chewing your overpriced food, watching other people live exciting, scripted lives on a glowing rectangle. You don't use this time to build your own business. You don't use this time to plot your escape. You just numb out. You tell yourself you've earned a break because you worked hard today. Here's what you don't want to hear. Nobody's going to tell you this, but you didn't work hard for yourself. You worked hard to ensure your CEO's kids get to go to private school, while you worry about the rising price of eggs. See how the safe path operates. It exhausts you just enough, so you never have the energy to build your own exit strategy. The trap doesn't just hold you. It makes you so incredibly tired that you don't even want to look for the door. Let that sink in. You are sitting across from your manager in a glass-walled conference room. You've prepared for this meeting for weeks. You documented every late night, every weekend you logged on, every time you covered for a coworker or saved the company money. You have a mental spreadsheet of your exact worth. Your manager smiles warmly. They look at a printed piece of paper and tell you what a spectacular team player you are. Then the tone shifts. The corporate script begins. The budget is tight this year. Headwinds in the market. Unprecedented times. They slide a piece of paper across the desk. It's a 3% raise. With inflation, it's mathematically a pay cut. They are actively paying you less for being more experienced. And what do? You don't flip the table. You don't look them in the eye and tell them 3% is an insult to the thousands of hours of your youth you surrendered to them. You smile back. You say, "Thank you, I appreciate the opportunity." You swallow the disrespect, shake their hand, and walk back to your cubicle. Because deep down, your survival mechanism is wired to accept whatever crumbs the master drops from the table, as long as those drops arrive on schedule. And that's exactly how you teach them your exact price. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It conditions you to be profoundly grateful for your own financial stagnation. Pause for a second. Let's look at your personal finances. You've been doing everything the experts tell you to do. You read the responsible blogs. You set up the automatic transfer to your savings account. You skip the dinner out. You watch that number slowly, painfully tick upward over 18 months. You finally build that 6-month emergency fund. You finally feel a tiny sliver of breathing room in your chest. Then your transmission starts making a grinding noise. Or a medical bill arrives in the mail that your premium health insurance arbitrarily decided not to cover. You log into your banking app, not to look at your paycheck, but to hemorrhage your hard-earned safety net. You transfer the money back to checking to pay the mechanic. You watch a year of disciplined sacrifice vanish in 3 seconds of a loading screen. And you don't riot against an economic system that keeps you one moderate inconvenience away from being broke. You just sigh. You tighten your belt. You tell yourself you need to budget better next month. You blame yourself for not saving more. Nobody is going to tell you this, but you can't out-budget a broken system. See how the safe path operates. It gives you the illusion of progress, only to ruthlessly reset the board the exact moment you think you are getting ahead. Stop. Think about how you treat your own time. It's been 14 months since you took a real vacation. You are burning out. You pull up the HR portal to request 5 days off. Your own days. Days you literally earned as part of your compensation package. You look at the calendar and immediately start second-guessing yourself. If I take this week, the quarterly report will be delayed. If I go then, my boss will be stressed. You start drafting an apologetic email to accompany the request, promising you'll have your laptop with you, promising you'll keep an eye on Slack, just in case. You submit the request and wait nervously for approval, like a child asking a teacher for permission to use the restroom. And when it's approved, you feel relief instead of outrage. You go on your trip, but you spend half the dinner checking emails under the table while your family talks. Because you no longer own your own mind. You have leased it out to a corporation that makes you feel guilty for resting. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It completely rewrites your definition of freedom until you genuinely believe that a monitored, guilt-ridden pause is a luxury. You're the one who accepts the 3%. You're the one who absorbs the financial shocks silently. You're the one who begs to use your own time. You keep playing a game designed to bleed you slowly. You tell yourself you are just paying your dues. You tell yourself that eventually loyalty will be rewarded. You watch older coworkers get laid off weeks before their pensions vest, and somehow you convince yourself that won't happen to you. You think you are the exception. Wrong. You are not the exception. You are just the current inventory. Every time you nod at a bad deal, you tighten the handcuffs yourself. And you call it being a responsible adult. Let that sink in. You are sitting at a coffee shop on a Sunday morning. You are scrolling through your phone, drinking a latte you mentally calculated into your weekly budget. You see a post from an old friend. They started a business 2 years ago. They are talking about a brutal month, a lost client, the terrifying uncertainty of not knowing if they will make payroll. You read their post, and a smug sense of relief washes over you. You take a sip of your coffee. You think about your bi-weekly direct deposit, your matched retirement contributions. You pity them. You feel superior because you chose the responsible route. You chose security. But your security is just an illusion. You haven't eliminated risk. You've just surrendered your control over it. And this is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. Your friend's risk is visible and loud. Your risk is silent, waiting for the exact moment a board of directors decides your salary is a redundancy. Pause for a second. Read that again. Your risk is silent. Let's look at the all-hands company meeting. You are on a massive Zoom call with 500 other floating heads. The CEO is looking somber. They are using words like macroeconomic headwinds and strategic realignment. They announce a 10% workforce reduction. 50 people will lose their livelihood by the end of the day. You sit there, staring at the screen, your heart hammering against your ribs. You wait for the private calendar invite from HR. In that terrifying, suspended moment, the fog clears. You realize that your entire life, your rent, your car, your groceries, is balancing on the mood of an executive you've never met. You played by all the rules. You got the degree. You took the entry-level job. And yet, your survival is completely out of your hands. See how the safe path operates. It convinced you that outsourcing your survival to a corporation was the definition of safety. The philosopher Nassim Taleb talks about the Thanksgiving turkey. For 1,000 days, the turkey is fed by the butcher. Every single day, the turkey's belief that the butcher loves him is reinforced by a handful of grain. The turkey feels incredibly safe. Then, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving arrives. What this means for you is that a consistent paycheck is the butcher's grain. It lulls you into a false sense of absolute security. It dulls your survival instincts. It makes you soft, dependent, and entirely unequipped for the moment the economic butcher decides it's time to carve. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It doesn't protect you from the slaughter. It just guarantees you won't see the blade coming until it's too late. Here's what you don't want to hear. Nobody is going to tell you this, but you don't actually want safety. You want the feeling of certainty, even if that certainty is just a guarantee of lifelong mediocrity. You choose the trap. You choose the predictable pain of a soul-crushing commute over the unpredictable terror of betting on yourself. You trade the infinite potential of your own mind for a retirement account that will barely cover your medical bills when you're 70. You complain about your boss. You complain about your salary. But on Monday morning, you set your alarm for 6:30 a.m. anyway. Because the trap is comfortable, the cage is warm. You are more afraid of being free and failing than you are of being captured and surviving. This is exactly what the safe path means. It is the voluntary amputation of your own potential, cleanly executed in exchange for a direct deposit. You're staring at your laptop screen on a Tuesday afternoon. You've finished your actual work for the day. It took you exactly 2 hours to do what they pay you for. But you can't leave. You have to sit there for another 6 hours. You wiggle your mouse every 5 minutes so your status dart stays green on the company messenger. You pretend to review a spreadsheet you've already memorized. You feel a crushing sense of emptiness. You know you are wasting the absolute prime hours of your biological existence, but you just sit there, obediently burning daylight, waiting for a clock on the wall to give you permission to go home. Because you've been deeply trained to value compliance over output. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It conditions you to perform the theater of work instead of creating actual generational wealth. In the 1960s, the psychologist Martin Seligman ran a cruel but illuminating experiment. He placed dogs in cages and administered mild electrical shocks. At first, the dogs scrambled. They tried to escape, but the cage was locked. Eventually, the dogs just gave up. They laid down on the electrified floor, accepting the pain. Here is the terrifying part. When Seligman later unlocked the doors and left them wide open, the dogs still didn't leave. They just laid there, getting shocked. They had learned that nothing they did mattered. What this means for you is that the modern corporate structure is the cage. The stagnant wages, the micromanaging boss, the 3% raises, the soul-crushing boredom. That is your mild electrical shock. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It doesn't physically lock you in. It rewires your psychology until you lock yourself in. The door is wide open, but you refuse to walk through it. Pause for a second. Look at your own behavior. You're lying in bed at 11 p.m. Suddenly, an idea hits you. A brilliant idea for a side business. A way to monetize that skill you actually care about. Your heart beats a little faster. You grab your phone and start furiously taking notes in the dark. But then the morning comes. The harsh light hits your face. You look at your notes, and the corporate programming boots up in your brain. You think about the taxes. You think about the LLC paperwork. You think about how tired you'll be after your commute. You think about the guaranteed paycheck landing next Friday and how easy it is to just do nothing. You close the Notes app. You tell yourself, maybe next year when things calm down. You put on your work clothes and head back into the exact same routine that is slowly suffocating your spirit. Because the predictable shock of the cubicle feels safer to you than the terrifying freedom of the open door. See how the safe path operates. It weaponizes your own adult intelligence against your ambition. It uses your logic to talk you out of your liberation. Stop, read that again. Here's what nobody is going to tell you, but you need to hear it right now. You are not trapped because the economy is bad. You are not trapped because you don't have enough startup capital. You are trapped because you are suffering from financial learned helplessness. You have been institutionalized by a system that pays you just enough to kill your drive, but never enough to buy your freedom. Look at how you chase growth in this system. You spend 3 years fighting for a new title. You stay late. You swallow your pride. You finally get the promotion to senior manager. They give you a 12% raise, but they increase your workload by 50%. They hand you a company phone, which is really just an electronic leash that vibrates on Sunday mornings. They give you a team to manage, which means you are now responsible for absorbing their stress too. You proudly update your LinkedIn profile. You buy your family a slightly nicer dinner to celebrate your victory. But your chest feels tighter. You have less time. You have more anxiety. And after taxes, the extra money barely covers the conveniences you now have to buy, the food delivery, the dry cleaning, just to save the time you lost by getting promoted. You didn't climb the ladder. You just bought a heavier, shinier pair of golden handcuffs. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It brilliantly disguises your deeper enslavement as upward mobility. You are the dog in the cage, bragging to the other dogs about how nice your collar is, while the door sits wide open behind you. You're sitting at your desk, staring at your MacBook screen. It's late. The rest of the house is finally quiet. The baby is finally asleep after fighting it for an hour. You opened your laptop because you promised yourself tonight was the night. Tonight, you were going to work on that side project, that app, that channel, that escape route. But your hand drifts to the trackpad. You open a new tab. You log into your banking portal. Again. You just want to look at the balance. You just want to see that direct deposit sitting there. It hits your bloodstream like a perfectly engineered drug. The bi-weekly dopamine hit of the fixed salary. For exactly 3 seconds, the anxiety in your chest dissolves. The low-level panic of not being able to provide entirely vanishes. You close the laptop. The side project can wait until tomorrow. You did your job. You got paid. Because deep down, you've become chemically addicted to the predictability of your own stagnation. And that's exactly how you let a reliable paycheck slowly overwrite your ambition. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It doesn't defeat you with catastrophic failure. It paralyses you with a microscopic, predictable dose of success. Pause for a second. Think about how a rat in a laboratory learns to press a lever. The behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered that if you give a subject a food pellet at exactly the same time, every single time, it stops exploring the cage. It stops looking for a way out. It just sits by the lever, waiting for the fixed interval reward. What this means for you is that your salary is the pellet. The 15th and the 30th of the month are the intervals. Your employer isn't paying you for your inherent genius. They are paying you just enough to stop exploring the edges of your cage. See how the safe path operates. It weaponizes your own biology. It uses your brain's natural craving for certainty to keep you obedient and entirely docile. Let's look at your trips to the grocery store. You're standing in the produce aisle, picking out the organic vegetables. You're trying to eat healthy. You're trying to do the right thing for your household. You look at the price tag on a simple basket of groceries, and your stomach violently drops. Everything is 20% more expensive than it was last year. But you swipe your card anyway. You justify it because you know, with absolute certainty, that your next pellet drops on Friday. You don't get angry at the system making you poorer. You don't channel that financial panic into building your own independent wealth. You just mentally adjust your budget. You cancel a subscription. You tell yourself you'll eat out less. Here's what you don't want to hear. Nobody's going to tell you this, but you are using your family as an excuse for your cowardice. You look at your sleeping child and tell yourself, I have to play it safe for them. I can't take risks now. Wrong. You are teaching them, by your own silent example, that dreams are things you trade for a dental plan and a commuter pass. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. You package your fear of failure as parental responsibility. You tell yourself you are being a selfless provider, when really you are just terrified of stepping away from the lever. You are the one who checks the bank app to self-soothe. You are the one who chooses the pellet over the open door. You are the one who closes the laptop when it gets hard. Every time you accept that bi-weekly transfer as the absolute ceiling of your worth, you are signing a silent, brutal contract. You are agreeing to rent out your finite, unrepeatable life for a price that someone else entirely controls. And you do it with a smile, because the alternative means facing the terrifying reality that you are responsible for your own rescue. Stop, look at your life. This is the trap. The safe path is just a brightly lit hallway leading directly to nowhere. You open your banking app again, but this time you don't look at the checking account. You scroll down to the savings tab. You see that number, the emergency fund, the responsible nest egg you've been building for years. You stare at it, and a warm, comforting wave of pride washes over you. You remember every single sacrifice it took to get that number to where it is right now. The vacations you didn't take, the dinners out you politely declined, the times you bought the cheaper, generic brand at the store just to scrape together an extra $100 a month. You look at that digital balance and you feel untouchable. You feel like a responsible, forward-thinking adult. Because deep down, you believe that accumulating dormant cash is the ultimate shield against the chaos of the unpredictable world. And that's exactly how you let the financial system silently bleed you dry while you smile at the wound. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It convinces you that sitting perfectly still is a valid defense strategy, when in reality, it's just financial suicide in slow motion. Pause for a second. Let's look at the math you actively refuse to do. You finally hit your savings goal for a down payment on a house. You spent 4 grueling years hoarding that cash in your safe account. You open a real estate app on your phone. You start browsing the neighborhoods you've been dreaming about. And your stomach instantly drops. The house that cost $300,000 when you started saving is now $450,000. Your perfectly calculated down payment is no longer enough. The goalpost didn't just move. It was put in a rocket and launched into orbit. And you don't riot. You don't question the fundamental structure of the fiat currency you are desperately hoarding. You just let out a defeated sigh. You tell yourself the market is just crazy right now. You vow to save even harder. You vow to cut your living expenses even deeper. Because you are entirely programmed to respond to systemic theft by punishing yourself. See how the safe path operates. It makes you completely blind to the invisible, devastating tax of inflation, because the nominal number on your phone screen never goes down. Here is what you don't want to hear. Nobody's going to tell you this, but your bank is quietly laughing at you. You hand them your hard-earned money for safekeeping. They pay you a fraction of a percent in interest. Then they immediately turn around and lend your exact same money to someone else to build a business, buy an asset, or fund a dream, and they charge them 8%. The bank is taking the exact risk you are too terrified to take, and they are using your stored life energy to fund it. Stop, read that again. They are using your desperate need for safety to build their empire. The behavioral psychologist Daniel Kahneman studied a concept called loss aversion. He proved that human beings feel the pain of losing a dollar twice as intensely as the joy of gaining one. What this means for you is that you are so terrified of seeing your account balance drop by a single cent in a calculated risk that you willingly accept a guaranteed 100% certain loss of purchasing power every single year. You accept the invisible theft of inflation because it doesn't trigger your brain's immediate panic response. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It pacifies your biological survival instincts with a digital pacifier. You check the app. The number is exactly the same as yesterday. You feel safe. But that exact same money buys fewer groceries today than it did yesterday. You are standing on a melting iceberg, loudly congratulating yourself for not jumping into the water. You're the one who praises the high-yield savings account. You're the one who celebrates the tiny interest payment. You're the one who refuses to learn how money actually moves. You trade your unrecoverable youth for paper, and then you let the paper rot in a digital vault because you are paralyzed by the illusion of risk. This is exactly what the safe path means. It is the illusion of preservation while you are quietly being erased. You're sitting on your couch on a Friday evening. The TV is on, but you're not watching it. You are staring at your phone again. You open an app you check more often than you call your parents. Your credit score app, the digital metric of your entire worth as an adult human being. You watch a tiny animation load, a little dial spinning to reveal your three-digit number. It went up 5 points this month. 5 points. A rush of endorphins floods your brain. You feel accomplished. You feel responsible. You look at the green number, and you literally let out a sigh of relief. You feel like you are winning the game. Because deep down, you've been trained to believe that borrowing money flawlessly is the highest form of financial success. And that's exactly how you celebrate the efficiency of your own chains. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It gamifies your debt. It turns your capacity to be perfectly compliant into a point system that makes you feel superior to the people who can't play the game. Pause for a second. Read that again. Let's look at the car in your driveway. You needed a reliable vehicle to get to the job that pays you just enough to survive. You went to the dealership. You negotiated hard. You sat in the fluorescent-lit finance office for 3 hours. You felt powerful when the finance manager looked at your credit score and smiled. They told you that you qualified for the absolute best rate. You signed your name 47 times on a stack of papers you didn't actually read. You drove off the lot in a depreciating piece of metal that lost 10% of its value the second its tires touched the public road. You didn't buy a car. You bought a 7-year commitment to never missing a payment. You bought the golden handcuffs of a monthly obligation that prevents you from ever taking a meaningful career risk. See how the safe path operates. It convinces you that accessing larger amounts of debt is a reward for good behavior. Here's what you don't want to hear. Nobody's going to tell you this, but your excellent credit score isn't a measure of your wealth. It is a measure of your profitability to a bank. It just proves you are the perfect host for their financial parasite. You will never, ever default, and you will dutifully pay them interest for the privilege of driving to work. Stop, let that reality settle in. The sociologist Max Weber talked about the iron cage of modern rationality. He argued that the systems we built to organize our lives, bureaucracy, credit, corporate structure, eventually trap us in a rigid, inescapable machine. What this means for you is that the credit system is your iron cage. and you are actively polishing the bars every time you celebrate a score increase. You are terrified of a late payment, not because of the late fee, but because the system will deduct points from your permanent record. You will lose your status as a good borrower. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It creates a psychological barrier to freedom that is far stronger than any physical wall. You stay in the toxic job because you need the W-2 for the mortgage application. You stay in the stagnant role because a gap in your employment history makes you look unstable to the algorithm that decides your financial fate. You're the one who checks the score religiously. You're the one who structures your life around the monthly payment. You're the one who celebrates qualifying for a larger loan. You are proud of your ability to borrow, entirely ignoring the fact that you have nothing of actual value to call your own. This is exactly what the safe path means. It is the sophisticated illusion of ownership, built entirely on a foundation of expertly managed debt. You are renting your lifestyle from an institution, and you call it the American dream. You're sitting at your kitchen table, looking at the annual benefits packet your company just mailed you. You flip to the glossy page showing a bar chart climbing diagonally into the sky. It explains the magic of compound interest. Contribute 5% now, the brochure promises, and by the time you're 65, you'll be a millionaire. You sign the form. You authorize the automatic deduction from your paycheck. You feel a wave of profound relief wash over you because you've checked the ultimate responsible adult box. You've secured your future. Because deep down, you are terrified of growing old and vulnerable, and you are willing to buy a paper promise of safety decades from now with the actual sweat of your present reality. And that's exactly how you trade the absolute peak physical years of your life for a theoretical payout when your body is already in decline. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It sells you a delayed gratification fantasy that fundamentally requires you to sacrifice the best decades of your biological existence. Pause for a second. Look at your older coworkers. You watch the guy who has been at the company for 30 years walking down the hallway. He has the fully vested retirement account. He has the perfect attendance record. He is retiring next month. He talks excitedly by the coffee machine about finally traveling across Europe. He talks about finally having the time to start that woodworking hobby in his garage. But you see the way he winces when he sits down in his office chair. You know from casual conversation that he spends half his accrued vacation days sitting in specialized doctors' waiting rooms. You look at him and you don't feel inspired. You feel a quiet, creeping horror that you forcefully push down into the pit of your stomach. Because you are looking at your own ghost. You are looking at the exact destination of the track you are currently running on. See how the safe path operates. It expertly convinces you that your time will somehow be vastly more valuable when you have drastically less of it left to spend. The philosopher Alan Watts talked about how society conditions us to treat life like a journey with a specific destination, a success, a retirement, a final reward. He warned that we become so hyper-focused on reaching that end goal that we entirely miss the point of the journey. He said life is actually a musical thing, and you were supposed to sing and dance while the music was playing, not just wait for it to end. What this means for you is that the traditional retirement plan is your socially acceptable excuse to stop dancing. You are sitting quietly in the waiting room of your own existence, frantically hoarding your youth for a celebration that happens exactly when you are too exhausted to stand up. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It relies on your complete misunderstanding of the perishable, fragile nature of human vitality. Here's what you don't want to hear. Nobody's going to tell you this, but you are playing a rigged, tragic lottery where the grand prize is just your own money, returned to you when you are too old to aggressively enjoy it. You are betting your knees, your back, your sharpest cognitive years, and your raw ambition on the staggering assumption that you will even live to see your late 60s. Stop, read that again. Think about the sheer, blinding arrogance of assuming you have 4 guaranteed decades to burn in a cubicle. You're the one who defers the massive trip until retirement. You're the one who puts off the true passion project until you have more free time. You're the one who accepts the daily soul-crushing grind because it will all officially pay off later. You're the one who looks at a digital pie chart of projected future earnings and tragically mistakes it for a well-lived life. This is exactly what the safe path means. It is the collective, mass hallucination that real freedom magically begins the exact moment your physical body starts to fundamentally break down. You are standing in front of your bathroom mirror at 6:00 a.m. The water is running. You are splashing cold water on your face, trying to shock your nervous system awake for another day of the exact same routine. You look at the dark circles forming under your eyes. You look at the slight, defeated slump in your shoulders. You let out a heavy breath and you silently curse your boss. You curse the rising inflation rate. You curse the housing market. You blame the entire macroeconomic system for keeping you stuck in this exhausting loop. And then you reach for the towel. You dry your face. You put on your approved corporate attire. You walk out the door, get into your car, and you do the exact same thing you did yesterday. Because deep down, it is profoundly easier to play the helpless victim of a rigged economy than to admit you are an active, willing participant in your own financial stagnation. And that's exactly how you weaponize your daily complaints to avoid taking any actual responsibility for your life. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It generously provides you with a socially acceptable villain, the corporation, the economy, so you never have to face the agonizing reality of your own reflection. Pause for a second. Let's closely examine your Friday night conversations. You are out grabbing an overpriced dinner with your friends, the friends who are on the exact same financial trajectory as you. You sit around the table, and the conversation inevitably devolves into a competitive complaint session. You passionately explain how drastically underpaid you are for the value you bring. Everyone nods in aggressive, validating agreement. Everyone strokes your bruised ego. But then someone actually calls your bluff. They ask, "So, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to quit? Are you finally going to start that business?" You instantly deploy the heavily rehearsed excuses. The market is too unstable. I need the health insurance. I'm waiting for the new year. You immediately retreat into the warm, numbing comfort of your shared misery. Because complaining is a psychological release valve. It safely vents the agonizing pressure of your suppressed ambition, meticulously ensuring you never actually build up enough explosive energy to escape. See how the safe path operates. It carefully curates a community of fellow inmates for you, so you never have to feel alone in your self-imposed captivity. Here is what you absolutely do not want to hear. Nobody is going to tell you this, but you don't actually want to be financially free. You desperately need the safe path because it provides you with an impenetrable, built-in excuse for why you aren't living up to your ultimate potential. If you leave the job, if you step completely off the path and you fail, then the failure belongs entirely to you. You can't blame the CEO anymore. You have to face the terrifying possibility that maybe you weren't good enough to make it on your own. The shadow truth is that you are deliberately using the suffocating safety of your mediocre life as a permanent shield against the devastating risk of a true failure. Stop, look at the inevitable future. Fast forward 10 years. You are sitting at the exact same desk. You are making the exact same complaints. Your energy is vastly lower. The tiny, flickering spark in your eye is now completely extinguished. The psychologist Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." What this means for you is that you are calling your chronic financial cowardice fate. You are explicitly calling your deep-seated fear adult responsibility. You're the one who sets the alarm. You're the one who accepts the excuses. You're the one who defends the cage. And this is why the safe path is so dangerous. It allows you to actively orchestrate your own destruction while allowing you to feel completely, utterly innocent. You are sitting at your desk. It is Monday morning. This is the exact moment where your entire life splits into two aggressively different timelines. You have a choice right now, and not making a choice is still making a devastating choice. Let's look at option A. Let's examine what happens if you stay in the warmth of the corporate cage. Fast forward 25 years. You are standing in the fluorescent-lit break room. There is a half-eaten grocery store sheet cake with your name spelled incorrectly. Your manager, who is half your age, hands you a plastic plaque recognizing your decades of loyal service. You take the plaque. You eat the dry cake. You force a smile at coworkers who will entirely forget you exist by next Tuesday. You go home to a house that is finally paid off, but your body is too exhausted to actually enjoy the freedom you allegedly earned. You sit in your recliner and think about that business idea you had when you were 30. You think about the risk you never took because you were absolutely terrified of missing a single car payment. The regret physically burns the back of your throat, but it's too late. You played it flawlessly safe, and you lost everything that actually mattered. This is exactly how the safe path is the most dangerous trap you are in. It quietly robs you of your unrepeatable life, and it doesn't even have the decency to leave you with a good story to tell. Pause for a second. Let the horror of that ordinary death sink in. Now let's look at option B. Let's look at violently breaking the pattern. You are sitting at that exact same desk right now, but instead of obediently wiggling your mouse, you open your email. You draft a brutally short letter of resignation. Your hands are shaking over the keyboard. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. You think about the guaranteed direct deposit next Friday. Your brain aggressively screams at you to stop, to be reasonable, to wait until the economy improves. And you hit send anyway. Instantly, the artificial safety net vaporizes. The illusion of certainty vanishes. You are suddenly, terrifyingly exposed to the elements of the real market. And for the first time in a decade, you take a deep breath and feel completely, electrically alive. Because deep down, human beings were not designed to be kept in climate-controlled enclosures and fed a fixed salary on a bi-weekly schedule. You were built to build, to struggle, to fail, and to ultimately conquer your own territory. See how the safe path operates. It expertly convinces you that the temporary terror of the open ocean is somehow worse than the slow, suffocating decay of the fishbowl. Here is what you absolutely do not want to hear. Nobody is going to tell you this, but your youth is actively evaporating while you sit in traffic, silently debating whether you have the courage to bet on yourself. You must stop asking for a corporation's permission to build your wealth. Stop, look at your own hands. These are the only tools coming to save you. Nobody is coming to rescue you from your comfortable misery. You're the one who has to break the addiction to the paycheck. You're the one who has to walk away from the false status. You're the one who has to step out into the freezing cold of real accountability. This is exactly what the safe path means. It means choosing the absolute guarantee of dying ordinary over the terrifying possibility of living free. The door is wide open. The shark collar is off. You can stay and rot, or you can leave and fight. Make your choice.